Now, if you're using an Eastern grip, what tends to happen is the more you supinate, the more the strings will face the sky. If you have a semi-Western grip, the more you supinate, the more you actually get into a great position here. You create that lag, but the racket also squares up, which puts you in a great position to strike the ball. All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about supination and pronation on your forehand. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this subject. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, firstly, you'll know that the forehand is a throwing motion. It's not a pull into this position. It's a throwing motion that allows you to supinate and then release the racket. Obviously, we're not throwing it, but we are still releasing the energy into the ball. The movements I've often spoke about is to pronate on the takeback, to separate, to supinate, and then to pronate. Now, some players, especially players using a WTA style forehand, will supinate all the way into the strike. ATP style forehand, again, we got the pronation, we got a little bit of separation here where we pat the dog, and then we supinate to square up the racket to get into this strong, the slot as they call it, where the racket lays back and you create a little bit of lag, and then we release and pronate the arm all the way to the finish. If you're using an Eastern grip to hit a forehand, the greatest grip, by the way, the grip that I use, I believe it's the greatest grip because you're hitting the ball with the palm of your hand and the racket is an extension of that. It's very intuitive for me to strike a forehand like that. A semi-Western starts to put you a little bit around the grip, so now you're hitting the forehand like this as opposed to hitting it with your palm. Now, obviously, there's some great players who've used a semi-Western grip, obviously. Now, if you're using an Eastern grip, what tends to happen is the more you supinate, the more the strings will face the sky. If you have a semi-Western grip, the more you supinate, the more you actually get into a great position here. You create that lag, but the racket also squares up, which puts you in a great position to strike the ball. However, what some players don't understand is as you supinate the arm here, your palm will face the sky. But I can still take this supinated position and turn my palm this way. So yes, by supinating a lot, you will tend to open up the racket face, but you can always close it with your forearm and with your hands. So although the racket face may open up if you supinate a lot, it doesn't have to. You can control it. However, there's no denying that if you have a Eastern or certainly a continental grip, the more you supinate, the more it's going to be a bit of a problem with the racket opening up. So for me, when I'm hitting a forehand, I certainly have the throw motion, I have the supination, but I don't have a whole lot of it. I'm not going to have as much as Kyrgios, Jack Sock, who have more extreme grips and can really supinate that arm and get into a decent position here. So the more you're towards an Eastern, a continental, have a little bit of supination, have a little bit of a throwing motion, but don't over supinate. If you do that, you may end up opening the racket face too much. So once you've got the racket back, maybe you've lowered it to pat the dog. Do not get stuck in the pat the dog position. This position should be nice and fluid. But as you move through this position and you start to supinate and you find the right amount of supination for you, try to time this movement so that your body rotates as you supinate. That is a connected move. There's a lot of people who think that there should be separation all the way through the shot. You can actually create really good separation by synchronizing this movement. So this happens at the same time. I'm loading my right leg, transferring to my left leg. I'm supinating at the same time, but I haven't hit the ball yet. So then I can release it, and that's where the separation comes in. This is connected, and then once you're here, you let it go. Now for me, the pronation part of this is pretty simple. All you have to do is allow the arm to rotate. Now, a lot of players will be holding on to this position for too long. They'll be too tight. Most of the issues come from just not allowing things to move naturally. But one thing you can do to easily solve this is to focus on the end of the shot being something like this, where the back of the racket is facing your head or the back of the racket is facing your arm. I've done videos, I'll leave a link to a video where I give 4 different ways of finishing the shot that improve your swing path. So one of them was the back of the racket next to the head, back of the racket next to the arm. The other one was butt cap facing your opponent. And what was the other one? The other one was creating a box at the end of the shot. I guess you don't need to watch the video now, I've just summarized it for you. But if you focus on these positions, it just helps you to come through the shot with the right swing path. I took a tennis coaching course where the expert was saying, never focus on the finish of the shot, because the finish is just a result of what comes before. So always focus on what's happening as you're coming into the strike, and the finish will just sort itself out. And although that sounds like decent advice, trust me, you can train your swing path and improve the strike by focusing on the finish. Because when you have a good destination, when you're sending the racket to a certain spot at the finish of the shot, your arm, your racket, everything will go on a path a lot smoother through the important part of the stroke, through the strike, to find that destination. For example, if I think about showing the butt cap of the racket to my opponent as quickly as possible, there's only one way of doing it. I have to rotate my arm to do it. If I do this, that ain't getting it done. So by thinking about what happens after contact, I'm going to rotate through the contact a little bit better. And while we're debunking nonsense, there's a lot of players who think that you keep the wrist stable into the shot and then only after the shot does it release. Well, if you take a look at a pro, they're going to be in this position where the wrist is laying back and the angle between the racket and the forearm is 90 degrees, if not less. But at the point of contact, it will be greater than that. And after contact, it will be even greater. So there's a release from here as you supinate all the way into the strike and through to the finish. We can see that. Now, before you go, if you like that, please subscribe. I need one of those silver play buttons. You know what I mean? At this rate, I'm going to be like 80 years old before I get one. So please subscribe, leave me a comment, like, all that good stuff. And if you like this, you'll like this video. Check it out. Talk to you soon.